We begin with a Fox News alert. The suspect in the Brown University killings has been found dead inside a storage facility in New Hampshire with a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
He killed himself inside the storage unit, and the firearms were found at his in the area of his thigh and in the area of his feet. We are 100% confident that this is our target. And that this case is closed from a perspective of pursuing people involved.
Authorities say he is Portuguese. He's a Portuguese national, went to Brown University for a year in the PhD program in the early 2000s, never graduated. Before that, he went to school in Lisbon, and his classmate was an MIT professor who authorities say the suspect also murdered at his home in the Boston suburbs, just days after the Brown University shooting.
The suspect's car was towed away from this storage facility last night, and authorities say they found evidence related to 2 shootings inside the vehicle. So that's major.
Let's bring in Fox News contributor Paul Mauro, who ran counterterrorism operations for the NYPD. He is, of course, live in Providence, Rhode Island with reaction. Paul, we learned a whole lot yesterday as all of this came to a head. What do you make of everything that we learned, your reactions to these developments?
So I think one of the things that we can sort of set upon here with some confidence is that the motive is going to be a lot less specific than a lot of the speculation had it. The commonality between the 2 crime events seems to be tenuous at best. We may never know, and you know, unfortunately in police work you don't always get a nice, neat resolution, but it looks to me like where we're going to end up is some general gripe against the school, somebody leading a slipping down life, and then there's this professor at MIT who seems to have been everything that this guy perhaps wanted to be and never quite became. They overlapped in school, as Brian said. They were of similar age. In the MIT case, the professor was married. He seemed to have everything going for him, whereas the perp in this instance seemed to have a lot less. So it looks to me like somebody who was just bitter, lashing out. And it tracks to what we talked about earlier in the week with the possibility that the classroom was just chosen at random. It was the first one he encountered when he went through that unguarded and unsecure outside door that was propped open or had no key card access during this study hall and other events.
Paul, did it surprise you that we learned 2 things? First of all, a homeless man is the one who gave the tip to the cops to close this case, but he was standing in the building, which talks about the security protocols, even though he's a hero in this event. Also, the suspect cased the university 2 weeks before he committed the ultimate crime.
Yeah, you know, there were echoes of Mangione in this thing because this guy was nowhere near as clever as he thought he was. You know, he graduated or he went to Brown, excuse me, he didn't graduate. But, you know, he thought of himself, I'm sure, as some engineering genius, and so he did this methodical thing where he cased the place and all this other stuff. Well, not only was that how they also picked him up on video when they went out to the residential area, but that's where he encountered somebody who ultimately was his downfall. So he goes in, he's casing around in the place, and, you know, Lawrence, it's an interesting thing. I'm actually not that surprised that it was a homeless person that stepped up. I'm going to tell you why. Homeless people know everything that's going on in the vicinity of where they've decided to squat. Even if it's a cardboard box outside. You know, when I was on foot patrol, if you buy a homeless guy a Snapple, he'll tell you everything that's going on in your patrol block in 10 minutes. He knows everything. So this guy, he did the thing that homeless people very often do. They're actually proprietary about, you know, as the saying goes, be it ever so humble, right? And so that's why he says, you know, this guy doesn't belong here. Nobody knows that building like this guy that was living downstairs next to the boiler or something. Shows you how bad the security protocols were. But it does show you just a sort of human dynamic here that he felt something was off. He followed this guy. He scared the guy ran. But then he came forward, as we know now, and he's the one who allowed the police to button the whole thing up.
I'm still trying to find out, did he rent that storage facility ahead of time? Did he plan on keeping things there? Was it a murder-suicide? Likely by his, we never know, but was that the plan all along, go to a storage facility and kill yourself?
You know, I would say no, and I'm not basing that on anything more than you guys know, but just the psychology, you know, this is similar to a whole bunch of terrorism cases I had and things like that. You know, he did all of this planning. And maybe it wasn't high-level planning, it wasn't nation-state level planning here, but he did do the recon, he walked the building, he did all of this stuff, he had the plates ready to go, he had the storage location rented ahead of time, is how the whole thing went. And so I think he thought that he had outsmarted everybody and that he was going to be able to toy with Brown specifically, with MIT, and probably with society in America at large. I think he had elevated himself to that position. He probably was monitoring a lot of the reporting and getting a kick out of it, but I think he also realized they're closing in on me, and when it was clear to him he wasn't going to get away, he did what he did. What else is in there, I don't know. I haven't heard they've recovered a manifesto or anything like that. So as I said, we may never really get a good answer as to what his motivations here were.
Paul, how long does it usually take a coroner to determine when somebody died? And then by that determination, we'll learn when he shot himself, if he even knew that police were hot on his heels.
An experienced coroner will know now. Not my area of expertise, but he's got a pretty good idea now. They can tell from the lividity in the body, where the body was lying, how much blood pooled, without being too graphic here. They can look at the eyes. There are these petechiae, they call. They could see the broken blood vessels. They can tell a lot just from looking. And, every cop has this story. The ME, the medical examiner, shows up at the scene and has to pronounce. And that very often is who makes the determination as to, in a lot of towns around the country, sometimes without even being a doctor, whether or not it is suspicious or not. There's a lot of slippage there. But I can guarantee you that's not going to happen in this case. By now, they have a pretty good idea of when he did it. They know how he did it, obviously. And I think that one of the things they're going to be looking at here, aside from in the digital world, to see if he's in contact with other people, et cetera, but they're going to be looking at ballistics here. And here's why I go to that. I don't see how, if he used the same gun in both instances, they didn't connect the ballistics from MIT to Brown instantaneously. Now, the task force was competent. I don't care what anybody says. Once they got rolling after that false lead by Monday, they were moving good. So they would have done that. So either he used one gun one place and one in the other, or he had other guns we don't know about. I would be curious to see how the ballistics come back. But at the end of the day, what I'm getting, and I don't mean to be too graphic, I'm getting a bitter loner loser. Slipping down life. We used to call it in the terrorism world loser to lion, because he wanted to make his mark in the world. He wanted to be somebody. ISIS knows how to play on that. I'm not suggesting he was in touch with ISIS, but that's the same phenomenon. And I think that he just came up here to lash out at something he felt failed him.
Yeah.
So, Paul, I was going back and forth with some buddies that's still on the job, and they had the theory that this guy was going to continue, but he felt the cops closing in. Have you heard anything from your sources about that?
No, I haven't heard anything that would be indicia of him continuing, but I don't think that is at all an outlandish supposition. In light of the fact that, as I said, he did all of this planning. He had at least 2 guns. He moved up here. Remember, he was in Miami. He moves up here to New England in the winter. It's kind of a reverse migration, right? Mm-hmm. And he does all of this stuff. He gets the apartment. He gets the storage location. He's got the 2 guns, which they're going to look at where and how he got them. He does the casing at a location for upwards of 2 weeks, according to what we're hearing. He went in and out of the building. All of this stuff tells me that he wanted to get away with it. This was not a suicide mission, let's be clear. And so as a result, you have to say to yourself, he thought he was going to sail off into the sunset, snicker about it, and then potentially, do it again. And so I hope that one of the things we get out of this is that the universities, many of which were very on board with defunding, we've seen university takeovers and campus protests where the police are not exactly popular. I hope they take it upon themselves to look at the protocols no matter where they are. We have active shooter training these days in high schools and grammar schools because of school shootings. The faculty and the students in these Ivy League schools, they're not immune to this no matter how much they think they are. And so if there's anything that comes out of this that's good, they got to do a hot wash here and say to themselves, are we in the same position? Because this was just a target waiting to happen.
Yeah, and lastly, I would flood Miami. If you want the facts, that's where he was. Do you think the investigators are there now, being that he's dead and this has been solved? How aggressive will they be in trying to reestablish motive, or to establish motive by maybe going back to find out where he lived before he came there in November?
They were there once they had him ID'd. They were there probably all week. I was hearing the name, but we couldn't go with it, Brian, because it was unconfirmed. And as you know, Fox is going to go with stuff that we can confirm and corroborate. So I was hearing that name, a couple of days ago, maybe a day and a half ago. So these days all blended together. But if I knew it, obviously they knew it. They had been down there, I can guarantee you. The FBI Miami office, Miami PD, they were scraping this thing, soup to nuts to try to figure out what is this guy about. I'm sure they did an entry into his location. They were on his cyber stuff. We know they were trying to get onto his phone. But again, it shows the planning. He did this thing with the Google phone and the European SIM card. So, he had that much capability. So very clearly, they are all over this. They are looking for a motive because the people who do this kind of thing, particularly at the federal level here because it's cross-country, they're going to be looking for commonalities and how to prevent the next one, which is the hardest thing in police work, to prevent something that hasn't happened yet.
Hard to target. Paul, thanks so much. Great work last night and now throughout the day.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.